The studio lights blazed with their usual intensity, but the atmosphere inside ITV's this morning felt unusually charged. Viewers tuning in expected the usual blend of lighthearted chatter, celebrity gossip, and cooking tips. Instead, they were greeted with a tension so sharp it could slice through the screen. Meghan Markle, dressed in an elegant but understated outfit, sat stiffly in her chair. Her polished smile hinted at calm, but her clenched hands in her lap betrayed a storm brewing beneath. For Meghan, mornings like this had become a battlefield. Every public appearance was scrutinized, every gesture magnified, and every word twisted into headlines. The Duchess of Sussex had spent years juggling her royal past, her Hollywood ambitions, and her desire to speak her truth. Yet, despite her efforts, controversy seemed to follow her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. Today was supposed to be different, a chance to promote her latest charitable project and reconnect with the British public. Across from her sat Allison Hammond, the bubbly co-host loved for her warmth and humor. But as the conversation began, subtle sparks flew. What started as playful teasing quickly shifted into something sharper. Allison's questions cut deeper than Meghan had anticipated, touching on sensitive topics Meghan thought were off-limits. The Duchess tried to deflect with grace, but her voice grew tighter, her responses clipped. Then it happened, the moment that no one expected. Allison leaned forward with a pointed remark that struck too close to home, and Meghan's composure cracked. She shot back with words laced with frustration, her voice echoing through the stunned studio. The room fell silent, the cameras still rolling, as viewers across the nation witnessed the spark that would ignite a full-blown confrontation. The show was no longer business as usual. It was about to explode, the silence in the studio was suffocating. Producers behind the glass exchanged frantic glances, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the cameras capture every raw second. Meghan, still simmering from Allison's jab, knew the moment was spiraling out of her control. Yet, what came next would change the morning from uncomfortable television into a cultural flashpoint. As Allison pressed her point with surprising intensity, a hush swept through the studio audience. Then, in an almost surreal twist, the segment producer whispered into her earpiece and urged her to wrap up, but Allison refused. Her persistence made the exchange feel less like banter and more like a showdown, and Meghan found herself caught between defending her dignity and maintaining her public image. And then came the shift. Stepping onto the set unexpectedly was one of ITV's top executives, a figure rarely seen on camera but unmistakably powerful in the industry. His very presence silenced the crew. For Meghan, it was a startling reminder of the difference between her old world. The relentless grind of proving herself as an actress, the quiet struggle of fitting into the royal fold, and this new battleground of media empires and broadcast titans. Here, reputations could be shattered or saved with a single decision. The executive's eyes lingered on Meghan, his expression unreadable. For the briefest moment, she wondered if he saw in her more than scandal, a woman with influence, a story too big to suppress. Was this her downfall, or the beginning of a strange new alliance? As the cameras rolled on, Meghan felt both disbelief and a flicker of hope. Something monumental was unfolding, and the next word spoken could determine her future. The fallout was immediate. Clips of Meghan and Allison's exchange spread across social media before the show even ended. Hashtags trended within minutes, some mocking Meghan for overreacting, others accusing Allison of crossing the line. The studio, once buzzing with routine chatter, now felt like a cage of whispers and judgment. Meghan, still on set, could feel the weight of every sideways glance, every hushed conversation. For her, this wasn't unfamiliar. She had endured the British tabloids tearing her apart, seen headlines paint her as either villain or victim with little in between. But to face such mockery live, in the very studio meant to showcase her charitable work, cut deeper than she anticipated. Audience members chuckled nervously, and a few even shook their heads as though they had already chosen sides. Meghan's throat tightened, but she refused to let her tears fall here, not in front of cameras hungry for cracks in her armor. Then, unexpectedly, the conversation shifted. One producer suggested Meghan explain her project more directly, almost as if daring her to reclaim the narrative. Meghan took a deep breath, steadied herself, and leaned forward. Her voice, clear, unwavering, cut through the tension as she spoke passionately about her charity's mission, about women rebuilding their lives after unimaginable hardship. Each word carried conviction, not rehearsed polish. The room began to change. The audience leaned in, their expressions softening. Even Allison, who moments ago stood as her adversary, paused, visibly taken aback by Meghan's sudden strength. What was meant to humiliate her became a platform for authenticity. For the first time that morning, Meghan wasn't just defending herself, she was commanding the room. And in the stunned silence that followed, curiosity sparked in the eyes of those who had doubted her. The tension reached a breaking point. Meghan's steady words about her charity had shifted the energy, but Allison wasn't ready to yield. With a forced smile that barely concealed her irritation, she fired back with one more cutting remark, "But isn't this just another way for you to control the narrative? People are tired of your story." The words hit like a punch. Gasps rippled through the studio audience. The producers leaned forward, their hands hovering over the controls. Meghan felt the familiar sting of doubt creeping in, the same doubts that had followed her across oceans and through headlines. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she wondered if Allison was right, if she was destined to be defined by controversy instead of purpose. But then, something inside her shifted. Instead of shrinking, Meghan straightened her posture and let silence hang for a beat too long, forcing everyone to meet her eyes. "My story," she said firmly, her voice resonating with a raw power that startled even herself, "isn't about controlling a narrative. It's about survival. It's about giving others a voice when the world tried to silence mine." The studio went still. Her tone carried no bitterness, just unflinching truth. Meghan's words sliced through the haze of cynicism, landing with a weight no one could mock. Even Allison faltered, her confident facade cracking as she struggled for a reply. The audience, moments earlier restless and divided, erupted into applause, spontaneous, loud, undeniable. Meghan's heart raced, but this time it wasn't fear, it was triumph. Against the glare of the lights and the pressure of millions watching, she had passed the test. Not by playing the part expected of her, but by daring to stand in her truth. For the first time that day, she wasn't just surviving, she was winning. When the cameras finally cut, the studio buzzed with a stunned silence. No one had expected the segment to spiral into a live confrontation, and even fewer had expected Meghan to emerge from it stronger than before. Moments earlier, she had been mocked and doubted. Now, she stood taller, a quiet confidence radiating from her as if she had reclaimed something stolen long ago. Outside, the world reacted instantly. Clips of her words flooded social media, not as scandal but as inspiration. Headlines shifted from "heated clash on This Morning" to "Meghan's defiant stand wins over viewers." Ordinary people began sharing her speech alongside their own stories of survival, of being silenced, of finding strength when the world tried to define them. For Meghan, the victory wasn't in silencing her critics, it was in realizing that her voice, raw and unpolished, carried more power than any rehearsed performance ever could. This morning had begun with her clinging to composure, trying to play by rules written for her. It ended with her breaking free, rewriting the narrative on her own terms. Even Allison, shaken by the exchange, approached her quietly after the show. There was no apology, but there was a new respect in her eyes, a recognition that Meghan wasn't simply a guest to be challenged, but a woman who could withstand fire and still stand tall. As Meghan stepped out of the studio into the cool London air, she inhaled deeply. The struggle wasn't over, there would always be critics, always battles ahead. But something fundamental had shifted. She had started the morning as a woman defined by controversy. She ended it as a symbol of resilience, proof that even under the harshest spotlight, authenticity could outshine scandal. And this time, the world was listening.